Hello, everyone. Welcome back to IT Applications in Business. We will be going through some exercises today with regards to pivot table and some data analysis, a little review on SUMIFS function. Again, I'm your guide and professor for this class. I'm Ma'am Drea. I have already uploaded your workbook on your Google Classwork. Our objective today is to learn how to create a summary report for adding with only one condition first. We will talk more on SUMIFS function, what is data analysis, and some of the pivot table, also the proper data set, and some is for regional report, some number formatting, and to create a summary. So you see here the comparison between the two. For the data analysis, first let's make sure what is data analysis. What is Excel? So in Excel, we make calculations like how to calculate the percentage of your grade or some of the net income, or do some functions like we did on the previous classes, like an average function. While in data analysis is more on, you see here, data analysis is converting the raw data into some useful, this is the raw data into some useful information like a table of a data, or creating some regional reports like we have here, region reports, or the total and sales rep total. So this is the SUMIF function. This 3-1 is a SUMIF function, and this is what we call the pivot table. You see that the regional sales is the report that is useful, and you may also hear some of the term like business intelligence or data analysis. They are similar somewhat, and they are synonymous. So let's go first how to prepare the proper data set. We have here what you call the column headers, or in technical terms, we call it the field names in the first row. And all the transactions here, the transactions is also what we call records in each row. And to define, we have to make sure that all the column headers, or are also known as the field names, in the first row. This one would tell the user what data goes into the column, like is it the date, the sales, the region, the sales rep. And in the records, each row must have a transaction in the records. For example, it is the sale in each row, or the values, which is the amount of sales, and the date. Around the data set, like this gray one, do not here in the blue, around the data set, a proper data must have an empty column and an empty row. Sometimes we forgot, we put in some notes in here. Do not do that. What about mom here? It's okay if it's already on the corner of the Excel. But again, to have a proper data set, make sure that this one is empty. Okay. Okay. Now let's go ahead to our exercises. So SUMIF function, how to create a pivot table. So let's go first to the SUMIF function. You may type in like in our class, we discussed about typing in the values or the format of words right here. But we remember when we do some if functions or any functions in particular, when we make it like the area or the criteria conditions, we have to make sure that there is no spaces in between or after or before that, because what you see here in the columns, the values should be the same in here, because that is the criteria and condition. And because we are copying the formulas, we must also lock in the range of sales. Let's do the sum ifs. We are finding the total of regions of northwest, southwest, and west, and the total of their sales. The sum range would be the values, of course, and to like I said, when we are copying, we must lock in the range of the formula using what F4 formulas, so that it will locked in. So now we go now to the, but we have to keep the cell for the criteria as a relative reference cell. So in here, our relative cells would be the one on the left, which is northwest, and we have to keep it as just a relative cells. Also, sorry. So this is the criteria range. I mean, the criteria range would be the one on the region, and this is also locked in range, so F4. And on the criteria one, we have to make sure that the region is on the relative cell. Do not lock it in. Okay. And of course, close parenthesis, control enter, or just enter. So when you copy down the formula to get the final original sales, like this one, you can use the Ingwe Rapid, just drag it in, or just double click on the corner and group, and it will copy it down. What it would do is just to look for the northwest, it would skip on the west and then stop on the northwest and then go down again, and then it would total up the values of the sales for the northwest and skip all that, and we'll also do the same for the southwest. So in here we usually do format the cells, control 1, and to the currency for that, and the decimals will be 0. So that's what we usually do, right? Or just go in here, do the number formatting. Okay, using the SUMIF requires that you type each of the criteria and create a formula with a relative and an absolute reference. This is the relative reference and this is the absolute reference, the one we do the F4. You can also do the highlighting one, or just click on the criteria range or the sum range for it to highlight. So that's another tip or trick for you. Oops, sorry. See, let's do the total for the sales equals is what it would do. It would total all the sales in here from in here, and it would stop when it see the October 21st. Sum range. And here, again, this is an absolute cell F4. And the criteria range would be the date of October 21st. F. Again, select all the data. Sum is. Sum range would be the total sales column. And then, of course, in the criteria range would be the date. You can select the criteria or just clicking on that. Again, SUMIFS is a combination of absolute reference. So in here, you can either select all of this and just clicking on the sum range and F4 or criteria range. F4. There you go. Highlighting. Also format the cells. Control 1. Go over the currency. Decimal is 0. Now for the sales rep. Oops, sorry. Equals SUMIFS. Summary range is here. Control F4. And then the sales rep column here for the criteria. Absolute reference cell, which is F4, and the criteria for the June. Again, copy it down, double click, and drag. Control 1 to format the cell, currency, and 0. Okay. So in here, let's pause for a while. When you do the SUMIF function, you have the tendency to make mistakes or to maybe copy the wrong sales or the column, just like what happened with me on doing the dates. Also, you make sure that if you what we did on the previous exercises, the absolute reference cell is not done on the criteria range. That's why the values would be changing. So in here, that's the difference between the pivot table and making calculations just using the functions of SUMIFS. So how to create a pivot table? First, you need to have a proper data set, which is we discussed a while ago. And then next thing you need to do is to the highlight all this or just one cell. Like for example, I will highlight the 376 and I would go over insert in the insert tab, and you will see the pivot table in here. The proper data set, like I said, the proper data set um, we are using, it should have the column headers and the, or what we call the field names for the date, the regions, the sales rep, and the sales. You can start with just, you can click on one of the cells or any of the set in the proper data set, and you can click any of one cell for that, and you, like what I did, and then click on the pivot table. And what it did, it would select now the table range for you. See that running ants. So we have in the create the pivot table dialog box, it will appear and it will have this condition of two parts. First, the table range, and then where you want the pivot table to be placed. So because we have a single cell selected in our pivot table, the table or the range text box has this correct range already. And it's easy now, like unlike what we did on the SUMIFS, where you can where you have the tendency also to make select the wrong range. So um we will be using, we will choose existing range in here, so that we could select, put it here on the same locations. So you see that it will already be put in the location text box for you. So you don't need to do that. Of course, just click on OK. What happened? So after you clicked OK, you will see this empty pivot table that would appear, and you will also see the pivot table field list on your right, or maybe on front if you're using a old Excel model. Let me put my, this is what you call the pivot fields. What you see on the, with the checkbox on that, the checkbox would correspond. You notice that the field names in the proper data set appears in the pivot table field list, like this one, in the form of the checkbox. So using also the checkbox for the region or here in the field, the check and the unique list of the region names will appear now. When you select that, it will now appear on the pivot table report. And you see that it will also go on the rows, sorry, not the rows. So this is the unique list or the distinct list. And using also the checkbox for the sales field, like let's check that, what happened. Since it is a number and it is a values, it would automatically the total sales for each region will appear in the pivot table report like this one. And you notice that the label above the region would say row labels, and this is not very smart, especially when you're presenting it to your boss for the reports. We would like to change it to show the field names or the column header name. So we have the feature of Excel in the form of a design. So in the design features, just click on the design tab. With the selected cell on the pivot table, click on the pivot table tool design. So the additional bar would appear or additional menu will appear on the ribbon tab, and go to the layout, report layout. So by default, it is on the compact form. So what we do is just show it on the tabular form. What Again, what I did is when you click on any of the cells of the pivot table report, a new menu will appear, which is the design, and then click on report layout, select tabular layout. The on the click drop down menu. After we choose the show in tabular form, you notice that the field name and also the column header name will show up in the report, and we can see that the um, field name here now is became regions. And now we need to add some number formatting, like the one on the above. If you click on the sum of the cells, again, please do not format the cells, because if you do the right click, the format cells will appear here, which is the full, like the one, not like the SUMIFS, which is all the menu will appear. Do again, if you are using the pivot table, I advise to just do the number formatting, because if you do changes here on the data set and you just format the cells like what we did on the sum, if the sum of the cells here in the rows or the values will not change. So what we have to do is select on the number formatting and not the format cells. So when we click on number formatting, only the number options will appear. So in the number formatting dialog box, select on the number formatting currency that you would like, and then click OK. So be sure to notice that because we selected the number format option in the previous step, the dialog box has only one tab, and that tab is number. This is different dialog box than the format cells dialog box that is in the 6 tabs, and it will add the number formatting to the actual sum of the sales area of the pivot table. So in here, select the decimal would be 0. I just click see what happens, and it would format all of the cells. The finished report would, for the region, some of the sales per region would look like this, and that's what I'm going to check on you. Let's do the sum of the sales with the date format. Again, select any of the cell in the proper data set. Just select one cell, insert, and pivot, create pivot table, existing location, and let's select the one before so that we could compare it on the summit. What we are going to do here is to drag and drop. So in here, you can hide and the pivot table field. So rather than the use of the checkbox in the pivot table field task pane, you can have more control by just using your move cursor and drag and drop the fields into the proper field task pane, like what I am going to do in the pictures here. Just dragging it to the rows, making it easy, and also like that one for the field. So this one for the because we are doing a single condition now. So this one, when you drag and drop it, it would give you an um, easier to move, especially if you have more conditions at your hand. So you can compare it there. Because it's this is just when you check the box, it's just a suggestions on the field. So again, I suggest that you drag and drop the fields in PivotTable field task pane instead of checking the field list or checking the boxes. Okay. Again, how do you remove the row labels and put in the date? Again, it's easier to just drag and drop it, unlike the one when you do the check sales. So in here, we need to remove by clicking on the design on the new menu that would appear, report layout, pillar form, on the sum of the sales, number format, currency, zero decimal places. Again, like the one we did on the previous exercises, the region it would show in the total, the grand total. Let's do the one for the sales rep. Insert pivot table from tabular range. Sorry. Select on any of the sales first on the table data. Insert new existing on the location below. And make sure to drag and drop on the sales. Okay, sales rep. This one, the pivot table analyze and the design would appear. Select on design. On the report layout menu, a drop down would appear. Select as show in tabular form so that this one would change in the sum of sales. Right click on the number format instead of format serial. Decimal places. There you go. So to summarize our lesson today, how to create pivot table, you have to click on one cell in proper data cell, insert ribbon top, tabular group, and also the pivot table button. And from the field list, you drag and drop the field and also the names on the rows, and there are the condition criteria for the calculation of the values in the pivot table, and also from the field with the cell selected in the pivot table, in the cells, you have to remove the row labels by going over to the design ribbon tab, go to the layout group, click drop down for the report layout and click in show in tabular form. And to add a number formatting, you have to click on the cells of the values and right clicked on that. And of course, the menu, right click, sorry, and the menu would appear. And in here, select the number formatting to have the number formatting dialog box. So the advantage of pivot table, it is, you see that it is really quick and easy to make. You just add the pivot table and then click the checkbox or drag and drop it. The conditions or the criteria in the rows are created automatically for you. However, the disadvantage of pivot table, if the source data changes in the proper data set, you might right click the pivot table and point on it, right clicked, and just clicked on the refresh every time you, if there's changes in the pivot table. That's one of the disadvantage of pivot table. While the advantage of SUMIFS function is that if the source data changes, the formulas would update instantly. The disadvantage just for SUMIFS naman is you have to type out the condition criteria and do the syntax like this one for the rows area, which is the rows area for the pivot table. That's the advantages and disadvantage of using the pivot table versus also using the SUMIF function. And that's it for today. We will go ahead on Wednesday for synchronous meeting. We'll talk more about the pivot table reports and layouts and some of the charts. You can do the homework here for you. Thank you and have a great day.